aware that people with disabilities are going to be particularly vulnerable. So she set up this place as a refuge, and now there are 50 elderly people living there. They're all destitute and extremely vulnerable. Some of them have dementia, many have been bedridden, and so on. Without this place, nothing good will happen to them. It's pretty Spartan, but they do have a roof over their head. They have wonderful Ukrainian staff to look after them, and occasional Western volunteers. So it was a privilege to volunteer at this place, to be able to help people who are obviously in such need, but are also incredibly tough and determined. Tatiana, who I just spoke of, she decided to go on. She could have just given up on life. That would have been entirely understandable. But no, she does have a daughter. She got big difficulties with paperwork, of course, because her paperwork was further down along with everything else she owns. But her daughter is trying to sort things out for her. So hopefully she will be able to build some kind of life again in Hartford City with her daughter. But for now she has somewhere to go. However, as I said, the old people's home is in the north of Kharkiv, which is the bit that tends to get hit most because it's near the approaching Russians. One thing the Russians started doing as part of the assault on Kharkiv was using glide bombs, which are extremely destructive even compared to the kind of drones and missiles they normally use. They are also very hard to shoot down. Google glide bomb if you're interested. And they've been using these to destroy Vovchansk, and there was concern they would start using them in Kharkiv City. It seemed like only a matter of time. And of course they did start using them in Kharkiv City. They fired two on the first day, one of which hit the Edinburgh Road. It was 300 metres from us. I was out at the time, obviously the whole building shook. We didn't actually lose any windows, I think because they're facing in the wrong direction. But everybody's obviously terrified when a bomb hits under any circumstances, except sometimes Ukrainians get inured. But this was symbolically terrible because Kharkiv had been under such heavy bombardment in the early days of the war. That had calmed down, but suddenly it was happening again, and people didn't know whether it was going to keep getting worse. So we had this glide bomb at the end of the street, and the other glide bomb that was launched on the same day hit the university. So that's a good start. Destroy part of the university and terrorise a building full of disabled old people, which is pretty standard Russian playbook. But we were fortunately not affected. We just continued to do what you do at an old people's home, which is buy food with donations, cook the food, clean the rooms, look after the old people. I wasn't involved in the physical work, but a lot of the old people, as you might expect, are very lonely, and Western volunteers can't usually communicate with them very well, but because I speak Russian, and most people in the east of that generation grew up speaking Russian, and will quite often speak it now for preference, I was able to just sometimes sit and listen to them. Of course, some of them had their minds wandering at this point. So sometimes old ladies will just talk about their childhood in Bakhmut for hours, and they just want someone to sit there and listen to them and put in the occasional supportive remark. So it was an honour to be able to do that, and to help some of these old people through the last days of their lives, at least make them feel that they're warm and wanted and listened to during that period. Meanwhile, of course, missiles are falling all around us because there's a war on. We didn't have any more strikes quite as close as that one, but there was another one that I think was about half a kilometre away, and quite often the windows would rattle, sometimes the doors would rattle for a few seconds if an actual blast wave came through. So that's life in Kharkiv. Nobody runs to the shelter because you haven't got time. If you're lucky, the alarm might go off before the missile hits you, but what's more likely is that the alarm went off 6 hours ago, and because there's missiles coming all the time, they haven't turned it off, so you never know when something's going to strike. There's nowhere to go except the corridor anyway, and if you're lying in bed at 2 in the morning and missiles are hitting you every few minutes, then you don't go out in the corridor because you never go to sleep. So you could walk around the building at night checking on the elderly people and hearing the missiles landing off in Kharkiv City, and the elderly people were just sleeping through it, because that's the only thing they can do. So I was there for about 3 weeks. Things were getting bad in Kharkiv. As you know, Project Epicenter was targeted, which did actually cause a significant amount of international outrage. And eventually the Americans finally agreed that Ukraine could use American-supplied weapons to blow up the S-300 rocket launchers lurking in Belgorod. And within about 2 days, the number of hits on Kharkiv was down to about 20% of what it was previously. And it's back up again, because there are other ways to target Kharkiv that we're not able to do anything about yet. But it was an example of how effective Western weapons can be if the Ukrainians are just allowed to use them. It's so obvious. You let the Ukrainians blow up the rocket launchers that are targeting Kharkiv, and Kharkiv will get hit by fewer rockets and fewer people will die. But this is something that we've been shouting at our government for years, and they don't always listen. Sometimes they do. So that was the main feature of my travels, I think. I've probably talked for long enough, because people miss out even right now. Yeah, those are the main highlights of all of that. I'm much more of a writer than I am a public speaker. So if anyone is interested, please do ask me for the address of my blog. The main point of this blog is to educate Westerners. So to you Ukrainians, it probably won't give you any new information, but it might be something useful to send a link to your friends. So thank you all for listening to me, and Slava Ukraini.
Anna, thank you very much for sharing your experience. It's just an example what shows what everyone can do. We all can do towards victory of Ukraine. Thank you very much. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
І нашим героям тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
When you watch any news, especially Russian news, they will say that this is the third year of this war. This is the third year of this war. For most of the Russians, they noticed this war only in 2022, after February, they were shocked. After September, they were scared because there was mobilization. For us, this is 3,807th day. 3,807th day, regardless of what anyone says. They have killed, there's Olympics coming, they have killed 487 of our athletes. When last time I checked one of the sources, they said it's 480. Since that person had a look at the stats, they have killed another 7 athletes. 20 of those athletes are world record holders. Last week, they killed heavyweight lifting champion of the world. Russians are killing sport, literally, because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia! Stop the war!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia! Stop the war!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia! Stop the war!
No Russia at Olympics.
No Russia at Olympics!
No Russia at Olympics.
No Russia at Olympics!
No Russia at Olympics.
No Russia at Olympics!
Neutrality. Neutrality. Hundreds of Ukrainian sport facilities are ruined. 210,000 buildings, civilian buildings in Ukraine, partially or fully destroyed. Millions of people displaced. 19,500 children kidnapped, to which they have admitted it officially. That's why from 17th of March last year, Putin is a wanted man. Have never negotiated anything political or war-related to a criminal. This is nonsensical. There's no point of negotiating anything with a war criminal. This year is a historical year. Putin overtakes Stalin as a dictator of Russian Federation, which is basically a castrated version of USSR. They still identify with USSR symbolica. Hammer and sickle, probably what was used for the surgeries for them, or what was hit, like what they were hit with. When we took off hammer and sickle last year from Mother Ukraine statue, they were offended because for them they still identify with something that does not exist since 1991. They are a backwards nation. They embrace the life in North Korea. Any of you who's passing by, have you ever considered visiting North Korea? Russians do. You know what they do there? They ask for long-precision ammunition to break another Geneva Convention, because long-precision ammunition, rockets that they get from North Korea, they are against Geneva Convention to use anywhere close to civilians. So this is why you will hear us say, air defense for Ukrainian civilians!
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 Because self-defense is no offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is not offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is no offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is not offense. Arm Ukraine.
And this is why we gather here every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. for 2 hours, every single Friday at 6 p.m. for 2 hours, and every single Sunday at 3 p.m. for 2 hours. And we've been doing so since 2014. The very same people that I passed by in 2014, I've been serving with them, I've been raising funds with them since 2022. Because I couldn't understand what started in Crimea. But we can't afford to ignore what is going on right now. This is the biggest refugee crisis of Europe. War in Ukraine is the biggest war in Europe since World War II. Who did Russians fought with on the same side in 1939? Who did Russia attack as USSR in 1939? Finland. Why did they join allies? The only reason why they joined allies during World War II was because they got betrayed by Hitler. Who does Putin call like a living person, like a living, breathing person? Stalin. Who does he overtake as a dictator this year? Stalin. Oh, what a joy will be in Kremlin that day. I don't even want to look up that day. It is going to be now, today, this week, or next month. This is what we're dealing with. Nothing but dictatorship and war criminals. North Korea, low-precision missiles, Iranian suicide drones, $200,000 and you can kill a Ukrainian family. This is why we gather here. Because this flag for us means freedom. Because this flag for us means our identity. Our language was oppressed by Russians. My parents can testify to that for every single year of their life since the middle of 60s until 91. My grandparents can testify to that, but they died from old age. Every single Ukrainian that you meet, ask them if they were born before 91, what language they were forced to speak. They are doing it again. 19,500 children that were kidnapped in 2022. They gave them new birth certificates. The same that I have. USSR Republic of Czech Republic. They gave it back in 85. They're giving it right now. Nothing changes with Russia. First war for Ukraine should become the last war for Russia, because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 And recently Russia had an official meeting with Taliban, and they have announced that they're gonna fight terrorism with ground terrorists. Have you ever negotiated anything with North Korea, Belarus or Russia? They will break their word as quicker as the first ice in autumn breaks. This is what we are dealing with. This is personal for us. I don't know any Ukrainian, not even one, who be not affected by this war. I live in London for the last 20 years. I grew up in Latvia. I was born in Czech Republic to Ukrainian parents. I have never in 20 years, before 2022, I never seen so many Ukrainians. But when I see them now, 90% of them refugees, 90% of them have a temporary protection status from Europe. You know how long is it? 6 months. Even your phone contract is 12 or 18. It used to be 12, now it's 18 months. You can't plan your life more than for 6 months. This is what Russia did. Every single defense budget in Europe is going up because Russia is a threat. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Central African Republic, flying women from Sudan to assemble those drones in Alabuga Polytechnic College because Russians are too scared to do that. They are paying $1,000 a month for Sudanese women to do what their teenagers are scared to do now. We are dealing with nothing but scumbag terrorist invaders. They are generational war criminals. This is an undisputed historical fact. And today, at least a dozen of nations can testify to that. How many innocent Ukrainians must die for you to understand? This is not a Ukrainian problem. This is a problem for whole humanity. Ukraine is a democratic country. Every single Ukrainian is a normal citizen of Europe. It doesn't matter if we are in the European Union or in NATO. Does not matter. If we make a choice, it is our choice. No one asks Russia what they think. No one. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 And before we continue, because it's not long left until this war rally is over, they're very short, they're only 2 hours, 3 times a week, and we're going to do them until this war is over. We're going to do fundraisers, we're going to raise money, we're going to gather here so we're publicly visible, so people can see our flag. Like hundreds gather when Navalny died, and hundreds gathered for dead people, for a dead person. A person who was facing 20 years in jail, yet he was hope of Russia. Now they're glorifying his widow. Pointless and useless, useless and pointless. There's no such thing as opposition in Russia. There never been. Yeltsin came to them on a tank. They gave them Putin for Christmas in 2000. There was never any elections there for the last 30 years. Forget about it. So this is why we gather here. Because our freedom is precious for us. Our freedom, our language, our culture is precious for us. While they are using their language as a weapon, We use it as our identity. And this is why it's so important for us that every single war rally, we stop for a minute and we honor the lives lost in this war. Self-defense and existential war for us. And this is why we stop for 1 minute and we honor the lives lost and the lives slaughtered by scumbag Russian terrorists. And we're going to have a minute of silence now. Thank you. Слава Україні!
Слава!
Україна! Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим захисникам сторіччя.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
You see, the same way they didn't
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state! Russia is
Russia is a terrorist state.
a terrorist state! Self-defense is not defense. Let Ukraine strike back.
like they didn't promise any rain today, the same way. Like the same way they didn't promise rain today, the same way in 2014 they thought it's not that this war will be over in 2014, that no one will attack, that no one will advance. This is why we gather here. Me, I don't know about you, I don't know about Belarusians, I don't know about our Lithuanian friends, about our African friends, our Japanese friends, our friends from Tanzania, our friends from Portugal, our friends from all over the world, yeah? Me personally, I am forced to be here. I don't want to be here. I am here because since August last year, my cousin was mobilized. Since December last year, my cousin is on the front line. An engineer who never shot a gun in his life, who never killed anyone, is told that he needs to kill Russians so his family has a future. He needs to kill Russians because they came to kill or rape or loot Ukraine. This is why we gather here. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war!
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war!
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia!
And those sanctions are working. The no trade with Russia is working. Even Europe went from 47% of natural resources, I don't remember, was it gas only or combined resources of any other sorts, but they went from 47 to less than 7%. And Gazprom, the source is Forbes. It's not just me reading it somewhere online, you can have a look. But last year, was the first time in quarter of a century that Gazprom has filed losses. And guess what? Putin was not president, dictator, leader, czar of Russia. Last time they filed losses. This is a fruit of Russian politics labor. This is what happens when you ignore terrorists. The sanctions will accumulate. But like Putin said, it's unacceptable. The amount of sanctions on Russia is unacceptable. This is the only thing that me personally, I agree with him. It's unacceptable. This is not enough, because no sanctions will bring the children of Ukraine. They got slaughtered on the battlefield. Civilians who were forced to become soldiers. This is first war for Ukraine. We never attacked anyone. They nicknamed us the breadbasket of Europe. Just with Belarusian border, Ukrainians put 250,000 mines because we got attacked from Belarusian border in 2022. And this is why every single rational and decent Belarusian is ashamed of what his government is doing now, right now. And this is why they stand with us. Because when, not if, but when Ukraine wins, Belarus can have a chance for democracy. Even bloody Russians have a chance for a fresh start. It will be another 100 years when anyone will respect them. Because they were silent for decades. They were silent for the war in Moldova in '92. Georgian war in 2008. We had people coming over to us a few months ago, thanking us. Thank you that you mentioned Georgia. Because we thought everyone forgot. No one forgot. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Help Ukraine protect peace.
Help Ukraine protect peace.
Help Ukraine protect peace.
Help Ukraine protect peace.
Air defense for Ukraine.
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 F-16s for Ukraine.
F-16s for Ukraine.
F-16s for Ukraine.
F-16s for Ukraine.
Because self-defense is no offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is not offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is no offense. Arm Ukraine.
Self-defense is not offense. Arm Ukraine.
And this is why most of the time I see exactly the same faces. Exactly of the same faces. They faces of people who care. Like for people, when you ask them on job application, recently I was asked, what is your religion? Are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? We gather here more often than the most Christians gather in church. We gather here 3 times a week. Most Christians gather once or twice. For us, our freedom is our religion. This flag for us means our identity. You can kill someone in Ukraine, you kill part of us. When I see that heavyweight champion who got killed this week, heavyweight lifting champion of the world, slaughtered on the battlefield by Russian scumbag invaders. What were we facing in 2022? More than 50,000 of the worst criminals. The same tactics they used against the Nazis in World War II. But this time is different. This time is different. They are sending them towards a peaceful nation of Ukraine who is looking towards Europe. Ukrainian politics were corrupt. We can't deny that. But in 2014 happened what never will happen in Russia. We had Maidan. It will never happen in Russia. Have a look online. Where was Putin when Berlin Wall came down? He was a junior KGB agent in Germany. And people of Germany came and they knew that that wall is coming down. He said to them, go away or you will be shot by Soviet soldiers. Did it happen? No, it didn't happen. But he saw the power of people that day. So now, when he has in his hindsight what happened on Maidan, this for him is a nightmare that this can happen in Russia. This can happen in Belarus. This is why in 2020 he sent thousands, I'm talking thousands and thousands of armed police officers. Not like London. No, they didn't have CS sprays, batons, no. They were armed with automatic rifles, AK-47s, to subdue democracy in Belarus. Russia is keeping Belarus in the past. Russia is trying to keep Ukraine in the past. They identified as USSRians. USSR does not exist. We are fighting people who live in the past. We live in present. It's for us to decide if we want to be part of Europe, and it's for Europe to decide if they want to have us. No one else should be asked, especially Russia, because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.